dig them out. If you don't have your Bible, dig out your smartphone. Pull up 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 16. 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 16. I wish I had it on the screen today because we're going to kind of do a walkthrough. We're going to pull some verses and look at it, pull some verses, look at it. But I didn't get that done. So it's going to kind of be up to you to keep up as you can. I don't know how I always end up seemingly, or most of the time I end up at this place, but I must like narratives. That's all I can say. Topical preaching is good too. There's many topics in the Bible that we should know and understand, but that seems to not be my thing too much. I like narratives. So here we are, back in the narrative again. Some of you know that we've been in 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 16. We've been in a sermon series the last week and in this week, and then we'll be in it again next week, and that is Diggin. Diggin. If we get real loose for just a minute, we might even look up here and say, I can dig it, Brother Matthew. I dig it. And that would help. And then you get so loose and like it, you look at your neighbor and say, can you dig it? I dig it. Can you dig it? Yeah. We're trying to get to this place where we say, oh, I dig it. I dig it. Last week we were digging wells. And the Philistines put the dirt in them, and it was up to those people, Isaac's people, which represented God's people, to get the dirt out of them. The Philistines wasn't going to do it. They was going to keep trying to stop them off because they didn't have any need for them, any use for them. Matter of fact, they was a nuisance. But Isaac's people, God's people, got to digging. They got to digging and got the dirt out, got the water flowing, and they had to keep digging. They dig one well and something would happen, and they dig another one and something would happen, and they were just digging wells all the time. And so that may be that way with us. We just got to keep digging and letting God do what He does and stay active and stay in with Him. And I don't even know if I see this, but the analogy is there, especially for people that like that. But one man said this: Christian life, especially preaching and ministering, is like a divine dance, and we never are alone. We're always engaged with Him. And I thought, well, even if I ain't much on that side of things, I like that thought. That is a rich thought. And last week we was digging wells. We brought up some pretty tough stuff. Matter of fact, it wasn't my whatever you say, where it's your thing. Different preachers got different things. It's just their thing. But last week definitely would not have been my thing. And so this week we're going to move from digging wells to digging ditches. We're going to be digging ditches today. We're going to pull it out of 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 16. And as we go along, we will we'll look at a couple verses, and then we'll see what we got in them. The first portion is going to be the longest. After we have we're going to pull one text and then back up to the first of the chapter. That one text is 3:16. Reads like this: And he said, Thus saith the Lord, make this valley full of ditches. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this service, for this time to be gathered, Lord, in your house. This coffee shop, Lord, has become your house today of worship. As through the week, it's still yours, Lord. It's a place where you meet the needs, God. It's a place where you serve the business community. You serve the down and out, Lord. This is yours. And so today it is as well, God. And we're gathered in your house here, Lord. I pray you bless those that are gathered in this place, Lord, front to back, left to right, God. Everyone. Don't leave one person out, God, this day. Speak to us. Make your word known to us, Lord. Make preaching possible and powerful and anointed, Lord. We pray for the speaker and for the hearers alike, God. Arrest our attention, Lord. Teach us eternal things. Teach us things of heaven, God. We pray. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. Praise God. He said, Thus saith the Lord, make this valley full of ditches. That's an odd text just full by itself. But remember now, we're digging it. We're digging it. So, as we read that text, do you ever have those moments in your life where you're like, keep that smartphone or that Bible handy. Do you ever have those moments in your life where you're like, what is going on here? You ever step back from a situation and say, what on earth is going on here? And And so this would be one of those moments. What is going on here? Well, maybe the Bible can explain it to us. Let's read and see if we can figure out what's going on. Why is this? What's happened to bring us to this place? Now, verse 1. Now, Jehoram, the son of Ahab, began to reign over Israel in Samaria the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and reigned 12 years. Okay, so are we picking up? Now, I can't spend time here. I got a long way to go. Got way too many notes. So now we see the king of Israel. Now we see the king of Judah. And so it's introduced both of those. And they're overlapping. One is reigning in Israel and began to reign in Israel, while another one had already been reigning in Judah. One is Jehoram and the other is Jehoshaphat. All right? Now, verse 2. And he wrought evil in the sight of the Lord, meaning Jehoram, which is the king of Israel, brought evil in the sight of the Lord, but not like his father, not like his mother, for he put away the image of Baal that his father had made. Nevertheless, he clave unto the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which made Israel to sin, and he departed not therefrom. And Mesha, king of Moab, was a sheep master and rendered unto the king of Israel. Are y'all still following me? Got these two kings, it's mentioned them. It's come back to the king of Israel, gave some background on him, and now it's mentioning another king, the king of Moab, which is a neighboring country. And this king of Moab now is telling that he was a sheep master, and that he gave the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and 100,000 rams with the wool. Now, this is what he was doing to the king of Israel. But it came to pass when Ahab, meaning Jehoram's father, okay, all words together, was dead, that the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. So when Ahab died, the king of Israel, and his son began to reign, the king of Moab said, "This is my chance to get out of this, to get out of having to give this unto Israel all the time." And King Jehoram went out of Samaria the same time and numbered all Israel. And he went and sent to Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, saying, "The king of Moab hath rebelled against me. Wilt thou go with me against Moab to battle?" And he said, "I will go up. I am as thou art, my people as thy people, my horses as thy horses." And he said, which way shall we go up? And he answered, "The way through the wilderness of Edom." So the last couple of verses there, the king of Israel, Jehoram, said, "I'm not going to just stand by and let Moab back out of this deal. I'm going to go to war with him." And then he went to the neighboring country of Judah and said to Jehoshaphat the king, he said, "Will you go up with me?" And the king of Judah said to the king of Israel, "I will go with you. My people are your people, my horses as your horses." And so they made this treaty, and then at the end, the king of Israel wanted to know, well, how are we going to even do this? He had the desire and he seen the need, but he looked to the king of Judah to know how to go up. And the king of Judah said, "We're going to go up through the way of the wilderness of Edom." So now that's what's going on there. There's your background. There's your, what is that? Prelude. There's your beginning story to begin the story. All right? There's the meat to set what's going on here. And so that's what's happening. So these two kings is together, and they're going to go on this journey. All right, now it gets a little bigger as we look at the journey. And so we pick up in verse 9. So the king of Israel went, and the king of Judah, all right, so we already knew that, and the king of Edom. All right, so now you got another king, the king of Edom, another neighboring country, joining the two kings, so now you got three. And so all three of them set out, and they fetched a compass of 7 days' journey. And there was no water for the host, for the cattle that followed them. And for the cattle that followed them. So these three kings get together, they muster what little bit of armies they got, and they join all three of the armies together. Those three kings, their little armies together, and they evidently got cattle and things with them, and here they go, and the journey they took was through the wilderness of Edom, and it was 7 days. Now some would say that they got lost in the wilderness, that it should have took 7 days. They got tangled up in the wilderness, and so they got stuck, all right, in the wilderness, and now all their provisions is gone. Okay? And the next verse says, so y'all with me? 3 kings. The problem is, the king of Moab said, I'm not going to pay tribute to Israel anymore. And Israel's king said to Judah's king and to Edom's king, will you guys help me? Let's put an end to this treason and this rebellion of Moab. Okay? And then they all set out to get her done. All right? To go do this thing on the journey. And they figure out they want to go through the way of Edom, but they get tangled up in the wilderness, and they go 7 days, not figuring out which way to go, maybe even backtracking themselves, and now they're stuck. They started out on this thing, now they're stuck in the wilderness, and they don't have provision. They started on a journey, they can't finish. They started out to do something, but in the middle of it, they used all their stuff. So now they're lost in the wilderness. The king of Israel said, alas, that the Lord hath called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. So they're lost in the wilderness. The king of Israel said, oh, God's got us out here to kill us. Well, what was the problem? The problem was they ran out of water. All right, if you're asleep or you're drifting off in your ABCD or your ADD, come back for just a minute, because this is a good point. And we'll pass over it. Poke your neighbor and say, don't miss this. I dig it. So here's what happened. They got out using the provisions they had, gathered their provisions together from one another, and used them. They all throw it all into one person. The problem is the purse went dry, and they ran out of water. The problem is the skins went dry. No more water. And listen, you can make it longer with no food than you can with no water. Water is a necessity. So it was down to the necessity. It wasn't just a want. It wasn't just, I think this would be better. It was the things that they needed. The one thing they needed to get through this journey that they set out for was the water. And now they've got out there and they went dry. Let's pause on this narrative for just a moment and let's do some life application. Isn't that us sometimes? Getting on the journey and running out of water. We haven't quit. We haven't stopped. We're not going to back out of this thing, go back out and sin, lose out, go live for the devil. Not going to go get drunk. Not going to go pick up some woman somewhere, some man somewhere to do some ungodly thing. Not going to back out, flip out. But I'm stuck in the middle of this because I got out in the journey and I ran clean out of water. Started out good. Started out with the best of intentions. Started out with what I had. But we got out in the middle of this and ran out of water. Some folks started out on the business, making their own business, running it good, but they got out in the middle of it and ran out of water. And we got to make the decision to say, what do we do now, Lord? Did we miss it? Did we start cupping joy? And now all at once, here we are in the middle of it, and things happen, and we can't. I'm not thinking of any one thing. I'm being theoretical, just in case you're wondering. And so we're in the middle of it, and it seems like the waters went dry, Lord. The coffee maker's still working. Jeff keeps the fridge good and stocked there, the drink cooler, but it seems like that thing. Is anybody listening to me online or later or now? I want to know, are you hearing me? We got out in the middle of it, Paul, and we run clean out of water. The resources that was pushing this, you know, it's not hard. I'm getting kind of happy. You know, I hope you get happy too. It's not hard at all. You can push your boat out in and hop down in that thing and grab your what is it, when the paddles are stuck together, it's an oar, right? And you're doing the both side thing. It's not hard to do that when you're rolling with the stream, is it? Not hard at all. The water's rushing us along where, you know, no problem at all. But when you got to go against it, or when you got to go when there's no current and there's no wind, and everything starts drying up, things begin to change then. And I want to know what's going to happen in the middle of that. That thing that you started out on, that thing that you shut the door, and you climbed down on your knees, and you folded your hands together. AJ's got to where he folds his hands together to pray. He'll pray 15 times sometimes before he gets done. We'll be in the middle of it, and he'll say, oh, pray. Like spaghetti hands together, and spaghetti goes down the side, but getting ready to pray. Over and over. And we got in the middle of it. And we started out on it because we got down and we prayed. And God said, I want you to do this. And we know it clearly. Wasn't the thunder, wasn't lightning, wasn't a committee that said do that. The God of heaven whispered a gentle word in our heart. And we knew it was Him. We knew His voice. And we started out and we're doing good. Even if we are a little trying to figure out how to navigate this thing and can't get our bearing just straight, we know it's a general direction. This way, Sam. It's this way. We got out here and the water's went dry. Now what are we going to do? Now what? So you got started. Now what? We haven't quit. You haven't quit. You haven't stopped. You started out parenting real good. And if it was your kid, obviously mine alone, I'll tell you, they was a lot easier to take care of when I was changing dirty diapers and filling up bottles and saying goo goo gaga and shoving a bottle in even in the middle of the night so Esther could get some sleep because she got up a lot earlier than I did. A lot easier to take care of them than it is when they roll over to teenagers. It's good preaching, brother. Thank you so much. Boy, now, we got out in the middle of it. We haven't quit by no means. The water's gone dry. We can't even figure out how it happened. We don't know who drank it or who poked a hole in it, but it seems like the water is just gone. And here we are in the middle of it. We haven't quit, but the water's gone dry. And it gets hard when the water goes dry. Thank you. Two. I seen one head shake and one yes. Yes. God, we didn't mean to. And you may have not done anything wrong for this situation to happen, this thing to go this way. But the first thing the devil wants to do is turn it inward to us. Check it out. I don't know if I can say that. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to have to back up later. This crazy king of Israel. I think he was. And we'll come back to it later and I'll try to prove it to you. But he's the son of Ahab and Jezebel. And in case you don't know, Ahab was very eccentric. He was what is eccentric? Eccentric is crazy with money. I mean, it's one thing to be crazy, but it puts you in another category when you're crazy with money. When you're crazy and rich. So then you can be eccentric. So he was eccentric. And he said, oh, I want that vineyard. And Naboth said, no, we can't have my vineyard. And he said, oh, I must have your vineyard. You know, you hear the story? And then he goes home and he lays it down on the couch. And there his wife's in the room. And he says, oh, honey, I must have this vineyard. And then that wicked woman come over there rubbing on his eccentric face. And he said, I'll get you this vineyard, honey. You know, and they kill him. Kill Naboth, take his vineyard. That's pretty crazy, ain't it? And this king is their son. So the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree. Because they get out here, and he's like, remember, he's kind of the one that got him here. He's the one that started this mess. And I just want you to know, be careful who you start messes with. Because you might get out in the middle of it and things not go well, and you have to make it through. So they get out in the middle of it. They got all their armies, their little armies, and just follow them out there in the middle of it. And they got their cattle. They're here in the middle of all this, and I got to hurry, but I want you to get this. And all at once, the king of Israel, he's like, oh, man, God has let us out here and to just kill us all. He's fell in pieces in the middle of it. God's got us out here to kill us all. You know, it's God, He done this. Here's the problem. Number one, the king of Israel did not understand the character of God. He'd been mixing and mingling ideas with the true God, with the false gods, and he lost the character of God somewhere. So he said, God got us 3 kings out here to deliver us to Moab, or let us thirst to death. He's got us out here to kill us and deliver us into the hand of the enemy. He forgot the character of God. And I give an admonition to us today, or you that will listen to this later, remember, do not forget the character of God. That's good preaching, brother. Thank you so much. Do not forget His heart for you and for His work and for the people around you and the down and out and the broken. And even for the people that miss the journey and miss the way and get it wrong sometimes. Remember the character of God. This king of Israel got out there in the middle and the water dried up and he forgot the character of God because he mixed it and mingled it. If I listened to everything everybody said had the fingerprints of God on it, and God said this and God said that, I would be a worse jumbled mess than I am right now. But what I have to do is I have to take all that and run it through my filter and remember what this book has said. Remember what God has said to me that lines up with this book. And remember His character. king of Israel got out there in the middle of it, and his flare or whatever took over, and he said, we're all going to die, because he did not understand the character of God. Not only did he not understand the character of God, but he didn't understand the will of God. So at work sometimes I have to do complicated things, much greater than I am. So the only thing I know to do is get my tools, crawl up in the middle of it and say, God, I done got you and me both in the middle of this mess. I done got us both in this, Lord. You're going to have to help us. So I just crawl right down in it, and I've been on the back lot for about 10 hours. Back there messing with wires, trying to figure out which one of these wires it was tangled up. And I love semi-trucks. Well, not really. I'm just being facetious, because that's a $20 word right there I put out on you, and I can't spell it, but I can say it at least halfway decent. So there we are, and I'm in the middle of it, and then semi-trucks, they don't color code wires. They'll have 50 that's yellow, and they'll have 50 that's white. And then you got to go to some schematic somewhere, pin it out yourself, trying to figure out what goes with. I know that's what I do too, shake my head just like that. What were you thinking? You was not. That's the problem. Color code these students. But anyway, I'm back there digging, and I'm half upside down, and you know, I'm just in it. I'm wallowing in this mess. And my boss opens the passenger door. I think it might have already been open. He stuck his head up in there, and he said, "What's going on, Matt?" He said, "Where we at?" You know, in other words, where you at with this? You've been back here 10 hours. Where you at? I got to go tell the customer something. And I said, man, I'm on the track. I'm all wild-eyed, you know. I'm on the track. I said, but I do not know. He said, okay. And he started to walk off. And he said, listen, he said, I can't go tell the customer that. He said, I need to know what you do know. He said, I need to know what you do know. Rich. I said, well, it's not this, and this. And I got this, and this that points to this. And I'm on the track of that. And he said, that's exactly what I did. King of Israel forgot. He'd been mixed and mingled with everything, and everything was pushing in. I hope you're listening to me. I hope we're together until he forgot what he did know. I tried to tell my boss, I don't know. He said, yeah, but you know something. Tell me what you do know. And rather than throwing our hands up and saying, I don't know, what do we know? We know that the steadfastness of God is sure. We know that he is ours and we are his. We know that last time we checked him, things was well. And if things are not well, he will show up and tell me. One man told my grandpa, one honored preacher, he said, or my great-grandpa, he had a Bible under his arm, that stuff, told my papa, said, listen, you need to quit growing. And some of you are going to get frustrated at this, but that's okay. We'll just pass over it and run through your filter. He said, God told me you need to quit growing tobacco. Well, Papa kind of went on for a day or two, and then he come back to that man, and Papa said, well, here's the thing. He said, I prayed about that, and he said, I am willing and ready to quit growing whatever. You know, because before we get too tied up in it, and I know I've got myself in a mess here, but, you know, somebody might have made wine or whiskey out of your corn. So better be careful where you're stealing your corn. But anyway, Papa prayed about it a couple days, and he come back and he said, here's the strangest thing. He called that man by name, and he said, last time God wanted to talk to me about something, he came to me. And he told me, last time I checked in, things was fine. The devil may lash and howl and thunder his big guns and shout all he wants to, but God talks to his people. God, thank you for that. Amen. I'll take 2 or 3 more. Oh, I gave it to myself. I'll give myself a couple more. That's good preaching, brother. God talks to you, and he talks to me. Why? We've been washed in the blood, redeemed, filled with the Spirit of God, and he leads us along. And when I get out of line, I promise you, the first one to show up is God himself. And that has happened on the journey more times than I'd like to mention. King of Israel forgot the character of God. He forgot the heart of God. And it all fell to pieces. He forgot the will of God. And now he's in the midst of it with 2 more people that's following along with him and got all their people with him. So we see the journey. Now let's look at the solution. Verse 11. But Jehoshaphat said, is there not here a prophet of the Lord, that we may inquire of the Lord by him? And one of the king of Israel's servants answered and said, here is Elisha, the son of Shaphat, which poured water on the hands of Elijah. And Jehoshaphat said, the word of the Lord is with him, so the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him, meaning the prophet. Somebody said there was a prophet. What does that mean? Here's what that means for us. I'm trying to move this along fast as I can, but this is some rich stuff today. Remember, we're digging it. We're digging it. We're digging. We're about to dig some ditches. We're getting there. We're getting along the journey. We're in the solution of the things. There was a prophet, which meant there was a presence of God, which meant we'll come to the answer in a minute. There was somebody, there was something, there was a being that did know. There was a being that had a way through. There was a being, there was one that can make a way through where there seemed to be no way. Just because I can't figure it out, and you're a lot smarter than I am, but just because you can't figure it out, and we can't figure it out, thank God, and I'll get to him in a minute, there was somebody there that said there is somebody, there is a being, there is one that can have the answer. And I thought it was odd that it just so happened to be the king of Israel's servant. I mean, he couldn't get it together. He couldn't get his mind all straightened out. But thank God he had a servant that knew there's a prophet around here. There's somebody that can get a hold of heaven. Praise God. That's good. There was a prophet. The king's servant knew it. He said, there is. And he gave him direction. And not only did somebody know that the presence was there, but there was somebody that knew it worked. Thank God for Jehoshaphat. And you can go back and dig that up later. You say, well, Brother Wayne said this happened later and that happened later. Well, yeah, but at this moment, I tell you what, his bell was ringing loud and clear. He had things together because he knew that there was a prophet there, and he knew that prophet knew how to get a hold of God. In other words, there was an answer. There was this. It gets kind of weird at this spot here because our language starts bumping up against things that's bigger than I am and maybe even bigger than you are. There was God in the midst of this thing, and somebody knew it. And so Jehoshaphat and the king of Israel and the king of Edom, all three got together, and they're going down to see the prophet. So here's three kings, desperate, going to see the prophet. Well, that sounds to me like the solution. And I know this is a lot of material fast, so I still got 70% of you. Are we still good for the most part? Some of you will catch up with this later. I've had all week to mull over it. You know what I mean? I've had all week to process it and chew on it and say, that'd be good with coffee right there. I've had all week to do that, where you guys are like, okay. So just take it home with you, process this. So we're in the solution. But I want you to know that just because you're in the solution and things are looking good, and all at once you do get an answer and you do get direction, God won't give you the rest of your life, but He will give you the next step. He will give you the next step. I promise you. He's promised that. He'll give you the next step, okay? So we're in the solution. But just because we're in the solution, it does not mean that things will not get weird. Because this portion of the notes that I got here in front of me, I typed it out and I was laughing because it says things get weird. Things get a little weird. Just because you're even on the track of the solution, it don't mean things are not going to get weird and awkward. There's going to be moments you'll be like, what just happened here? Especially things out of your control, especially if you work with other people or other people involved in your life, and you got a family, or things get weird sometimes. And you're like, whoa, what just happened? How did that just happen? How do we go from here to here? Things just got weird. Verse 13. And Elisha, so the kings go down to this prophet. And Elisha said, so Elisha comes out and he's going to talk to these kings. He said to the king of Israel. Now this is quite a greeting. I mean, we're headed in the solution. We've got to get help. What have I to do with thee? Get thee to the prophets of thy father and to the prophets of thy mother. And the king of Israel said unto him, Nay, for the Lord hath called these three kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. He's still being eccentric. He's still being dramatic. You know why? Because that's the best he's got. Now, I know you never get that way, and that's great. But I do sometimes. I don't know what happens to me. My little brain clicks off. And I do get that way sometimes. We're all going to die. Ask my wife or my daughter or AJ if he can spell it out for you. But I get to that moment where I feel that way. And here he is stuck in this because that's where he's stuck. But check out how weird it's got. I mean, the prophets come out to talk to these three kings, and the first thing out of the prophet's mouth is this. Listen, I don't know what, look at the king of Israel, whatever happened there. Something's going on there. There's something. And he said, listen, I don't know what you're doing here. You need to go back home and consult all the gods of your mom and dad is what you need to do. Go back where you came from and get a hold of them. And his answer was this. He's like, no, God's called us all out here to die. I don't know what to do now. I can't go back and I can't go forward. I'm stuck. Well, some of you will get that. Some of you will later. Can't go back. I can't go back. I can't go back the way I used to think. And right now I'm stuck and can't go forward. I can't go back there because I got too much riding on this. You know, around here, you know who worry me? It's the young guys that sling a dope. They worry me. Not the old ones because they got too much to lose. So they're not going to do something crazy fast and just sporadic. You know, most of the time that's not going to happen. That's like being in jail or in prison with older guys. They're not going to bother you because they got too much to lose. Especially guys that's doing a long stretch of time. Those guys that's got everything together, they are nice and kind for the most part unless you mess with some of their stuff because they're wanting to make their state just as good as they can be. But it's the younger guys sometimes that gets stuck in because they make these rash, fast decisions and they worry me. And so I can't go back to that rash, fast thinking because I got too much riding on it now. Is anybody listening to me? Can't just up and do whatever here because there's more in this than just me. You can't just up and do whatever in your own life because there's more in this than just you. So we can't go back to that old way of thinking. But we're stuck and we can't go forward, so what are we going to do now? Elisha said, as the Lord of hosts liveth before whom I stand, surely were it not that I regard the presence. I mean, this is confrontational. The presence of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, I would not look toward thee nor see thee. That's the King James. It gets a little whatever. But he said, listen, man, I wouldn't even look at you if it wasn't for this dude. I wouldn't give you the time of day if it wasn't for your buddy here. Right, wrong, maybe. Is that the spring kind of up to date? That's the modern King James version of some sort, but and it's not even the what is it when it's verified, certified? It's none of the above. But he said, "Listen, I wouldn't even talk to you if it wasn't for this dude here with you." Things just got kind of weird, right? But you know what? Here's what I pulled from that. Let's not get stuck on that because we're going to move past it. Just because it got weird, don't mean it's going to stay weird. It's going to get better. It may get weird again, but it'll get better. Here's the point, though. Check it out. Get this with me. I dig it. Just took one. Just took one. The whole armies all together made one army, so they had the whole army. They had two other kings, the king of Edom and the king of Israel. But evidently they didn't know too much about the character of God. But it just took one. Just took one man, one woman, one young man, one young woman, one person to have the hookup, so to speak. One person to know who God is. One person to know what God can do. The prophet said, I know this man right here. I know that he knows what God can do. And because of him, this thing's going to happen. Things are about to happen just because it took one. That preaches to my little heart. First thing I want to do when everything goes whatever, I want to get a consensus of everybody around me, and then I just want to step into it. That is my go-to. Over and over and over. But really, when it comes to God and following him, it's not always going to get to be like that. Will it get to be that way sometimes? Yes, but not always. We may have to be the one. The one. Now, I'm not just talking about a standard of a look. I'm not just talking about preserving something. But I'm talking about as far as God is concerned. God is concerned. Or he's placed it on your life and on my life. What he means. Sometimes it may be you or it may be me that has to say, I believe God. And it may be in a very tough moment that we have to say, I believe him. It may be when things are stirred up, things are not going well, things are sort of falling apart. But we have to say, I believe him. I see the power of one man. Well, so everybody's spoken. Things are kind of awkward. Things are kind of weird. We're stuck in the middle of it. The prophet's gave the word that good thing he's with you. But now what are you going to do with that? Well, the next thing that has to happen is we're going down through this narrative, by the way. If you haven't noticed, we're reading down through this together. The next thing that has to happen is got to clear the air. Got to clear the air. Clear the air. 15. But now, bring me a minstrel. And it came to pass, when the minstrel played, that the hand of the Lord came upon him. So he said, the very next thing, the very next phrase out of his mouth, unless we missed some kind of dialogue that didn't get recorded for us, what we see recorded is the very next thing the prophet said after he has all this dialogue with these kings saying, you shouldn't even be here, you better be glad he's with you, and they do all this thing. Then all at once, the next thing he says is, bring me a minstrel. That's somebody that can play an instrument, somebody that can play music. Bring me somebody that can play music. And when the person played the music, then the hand of the Lord came upon the prophet. Are you seeing what's happened? Had to have a change of atmosphere. Now, it just so happened to be music this time. And I want you to know that lots of times music does work. And that's the reason it matters what kind of music that we listen to. Now, that's a bonus. That's not even in my notes. If we go to filling our ears all the time with stuff that is against God, then, we've probably got some issues, and we need to do some checking up and checking in and find out where the heart of God is. That's good for you. Thank you so much. I'm moving on. If we are stuck and all we listen to all the time is love songs, and that's all we listen to, then here's the issue. The fact of the matter is, we probably will be very romantic, but we might not be very God-connected. So we'll probably need to evaluate and figure out if we don't need to balance that out with some music about Him rather than just some music about the other one that we love. And honestly, I struggled with that for a while because for 15 years I didn't listen to any love songs. None at all. I mean, why do you listen to love songs when you're going to be single the rest of your life? You know what I mean? And so I thought, there we go. And so no love song for me. So I would listen, la, 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 la. But then there came a day where that I did fall in love. And God gave me and sent me a beautiful, wonderful, godly woman to be a part of my life. And so then I had to reevaluate and start listening to some love songs. I took a little bit to get used to it. We're still trying to get used to it just a little bit. But here's what I'm trying to tell you. The music set the atmosphere. Now there's other things that'll do it too. But music is very powerful that way. There had to be an atmosphere change. They couldn't go out and they couldn't go out and dig this way. I mean, are we going to go out and dig with everything a mess? No, had to be a change of atmosphere. And the devil loves to do that, by the way. Loves to get everything just all stirred up. Just all stirred up. If he can't stir people up over here, he'll stir people up over there. If he can't stir up over there to here, he'll stir up here to there. If he can't stir up over there, he'll try to stir up in my home. He does it all the time. I see his fingers, and he'll even try to use me sometime to do it. And I get out in the middle of it, and I'm all frustrated. And then I think, I know who this is. This is the devil. This is the enemy trying to get me and Esther at one another, and trying to get the kids, Micah at Esther, or Micah at me, and I see the devil's fingerprints on it. And then if that won't work, he'll try to pit us like that at this church. And if that won't work, he'll try to do it to whoever's listening. And wherever you're at, the devil will be in the middle of it, trying to just get things all messed up. We can't go out and dig with everything all messed up. It's a good point, Brother Matthew. I know I gotta pray to bring this thing to a close. But the music set the atmosphere. The music set the atmosphere. I believe it was somehow it changed things. I believe somehow it lessened the friction. I believe somehow it set straight that was going on. I believe it turned the tide. I believe it really helped. Just remember that. When things is going on with you, when things is going on with your family, when there's eruptions and there's distractions, just remember that lots of times a good song or some good music will set things right. Will set things right. And I got to hurry. Maybe this should have been a two-part. Maybe I'll cut it off in a minute. We'll just do a two-part. That's what we're going to do. 2 minutes, I'm done. So, watch this. Here we go. Other day. I got 2 minutes. The other day, I'm at work. It's got bad. It's got hard. Some things has happened. People that I don't have any control over. And that splashes over onto me. Well, sometimes I don't deal with situations perfect the first time. I got to have a round 2 or round 3 to get it right. I don't know why that is. I'm praying, God, would you please help me to get it right the first time. First time through. So it's got tough and hard. Build anxiety in me. I already got about 3/4 of it anyway. So I'm like, I can't fix this vehicle. I can't do this. And so I got this thing where if I just push the I on my tablet on Google search, it automatically brings up instrumental hymns. Instrumental hymns. And there's these beautiful instrumental hymns already ready in the background. They're already ready. I've already been there enough to where my Google tablet at work remembers I've been here before. Y'all with me? And I just push the I, and it pops up, and I hit go, because I've already Bluetoothed to the little speaker here that I got set up under the hood with me, and it starts these instrumental hymns, and all of us, it just takes over. I'm just, And it's the instrumental hymn, and it's very, very classical too, by the way. And some of the guys are walking by and they're like, dude, is that classical music you're listening to? I'm like, well, it's classical instrumental hymns or something, I'm sure. And so they're all questioning me, but something happens with that. And it begins, all at once my head isn't red. All at once, whatever has got me all stirred up just begins to sink and subside. And some of you now, I've told you too much, you're like, Brother Wayne needs prayer. He's got so many traditions. Well, you should have seen me before he got me. And it changes the atmosphere. It gets us ready to dig. Glory to God. I didn't need to go on trying to work on that vehicle. I didn't need to go back the second time and storm the office. I didn't need to go back and do it again. I needed God on the scene in a way to get me ready to dig. Right. Sometimes He don't need us to go do something else. He needs us to get in touch with Him where we're at before we move on. Now that's good preaching. Next week we'll come back and dig. Let's be standing. We didn't get our shovels out yet, Sam. That's a little thing we've had going on back and forth a little bit. We've been having some prayer meetings and things. We had quit when COVID come. The last couple of weeks we've been having a couple, and God's been helping us. And so we've been talking about, I need to get my shovel back out. And that's the code name for we're about to go pray. We're about to go pray. It's a code word. And so we haven't even got to the digging yet. But man, we've got on the journey, ain't we? We've got on the journey. We've got in a mess. We've got out long enough to know we can't do it on our own, ain't we? I mean, how many of you in here want to just take us all home with you? And you just be responsible for us? No, you do not want that. You do not want that. Why? Because we see it's much too big for us alone. So there's got to be something, someone. And we found the source, and the answer is Him. And sometimes it's going to get weird. I'm doing a little recap. Is it all right while we're quick? And it's going to get weird in the middle of the journey. There's some stuff that God is even going to allow. He's going to allow it. He may even going to use it, but it's going to get weird. Yeah. We ain't going to give up in the middle of it just because it gets weird on the journey or the water runs dry. Because we know there is a source. We know there is an answer. And it came through the music that time. And there'll be many times that's what He will use to come in through is the music, the good music, about Him. In other words, whatever it is that shifts the atmosphere from you and me and our problems over to Him. Gets my gaze upward. That's what I'm talking about. I don't have to be music. It could be something else. It could be somebody giving you a text. Could be somebody giving you a call. Could be God sending the Collingsworth tour bus down the road so you can see it as the music plays in the background. He will get our attention. He will. If we'll look at Him, He'll look at us. And the Spirit of God within us rise up, and then we'll be able to go do some digging.